This is a Salvia Divinorum tincture, trip report by John Doe, posted to arrowwood.org on April 16, 2007. My brother ordered a bottle of the Emerald Essence tincture and asked me if I would sit with him while he tried it. I did not know anything about salvia. I thought it might be a mild herb that would help me relax. He placed a few drops under his tongue and waited. Within a minute, his eyes widened. He said it was far stronger than he expected. He described a feeling of being pulled apart and then put back together again. He sounded both amazed and a little frightened. I watched him for a few minutes. He seemed calm after the initial shock. He told me he would be fine and that I could try it later if I wanted. 2 weeks later, I decided to try it. I had never used any drug or entheogen before. I was nervous but also curious. It was a quiet night. The clock on the wall read 9 o'clock. I took a small amount of the liquid and held it in my mouth. The taste was bitter and the liquid burned the back of my throat. The burn was stronger than I expected. I kept the liquid there for about 10 minutes, letting it sit on the roof of my mouth. After that time, I felt a lightness spread through my head. The first thing I noticed was that the far wall of my bedroom seemed to move away from me as if it were sliding outward. It was a strange visual shift. My heart began to race. I felt a surge of panic because I did not understand what was happening. I reminded myself that I had taken salvia. The reminder helped the panic lessen. I glanced at the clock again. The hands of the clock seemed to belong to another version of me, as if I were watching myself watch the time. That moment made me realize that my perception was changing. A heavy pressure then settled on my chest. It felt like a large stone was resting on my body, sliding on and off. Each time the stone slipped away, I felt as if I might float away. I tried to keep my body still. The feeling was similar to placing a glass on a napkin in a windy room so that the glass would not be blown away. I felt warm, then hot, then cold at the same time. It was like a fever that gives you sweat and chills together. My hands began to shake. The shaking was not from fear. It was a physical reaction that I could not explain. I shifted into a more comfortable position on the floor. As soon as I settled, the sensation of movement increased. I felt as if I were a leaf drifting on a stream, carried toward an unknown destination. I had no control over the direction, but I accepted it. The leaf moved through my own body, through my blood, past my heart down to my toes. It felt like I was sliding between two invisible walls, or like a liquid spilling over the edge of a glass. My head acted as a guide. Sometimes the movement was to the left, sometimes to the right. I did not choose any of it, but I was not afraid. The journey continued for a long time. I saw many images. I saw a thick, silvery pink liquid moving up and down in waves. I imagined a sea made of my own body, with a small ship sailing on top of me. The ship seemed to cut through the waves of my own flesh. I felt as if I were traveling through myself again and again, looping back to the same place. Eventually, I sensed that I was moving toward an exit, a point where the in-between space would end. When the exit appeared, I felt a sudden thrust, like a cannonball being shot into the sky. I did not land on the ground. Instead, I became wind. I could feel the wind moving through trees, over grass, up into high clouds. I did not think about being wind. I simply experienced the sensation of moving without a body. The wind carried me over a field, over a forest, over a river. I felt the cool air on my face, the pressure on my back, the sound of leaves rustling. I was not a person anymore. I was just wind. After a while, the wind slowed, and I began to fall like a leaf. I landed on a patch of grass. I felt what it was like to be grass. I felt the rain falling on me, soaking my roots, giving me nourishment. The water was cool and refreshing. While I was grass, a memory surfaced. I remembered being a small child running on the grass in my old backyard, playing with my sister. We ran around the house, racing each other, laughing. I felt the same playful energy that I felt as a child. I could see the house, the swing set, the old oak tree. I could feel my legs dangling from a low branch, my feet not touching the ground. The world felt huge and full of possibilities. During all of this, I kept thinking about Salvia Divinorum. I wondered how the plant could link all these experiences together. I felt that the plant was a kind of life force that allowed me to see the connections between every feeling, every object, every being. I felt grateful to the plant for showing me these connections. I also felt that the plant was grateful to have me as a companion for this journey. That thought humbled me. The next stage of the trip was different. I saw a figure appear in a blurry haze. At first, I could not make out any details. Then, the image cleared. It was an older gentleman walking with a beautiful young woman who seemed to be his daughter. The man wore a round hat that looked like something from early 20th century New York. He had gray hair, a large nose, and big eyes. His expression was simple and happy. The scene felt like an alley in New York sometime in the 1930s. I saw quick flashes of people in bars, people who looked like a mix of cartoons and clay models. I heard accordion music playing on the street, and the music reminded me of a French cafe. The sounds and sights helped me place the setting. A city with narrow streets, small shops, and dimly lit pubs. I entered a small shop that sold bread, cheese, and other food items. The shopkeeper was a man who seemed frustrated. His hands moved slowly, his shoulders were hunched. I could feel his frustration as if it were my own. I reached out and touched his forehead as if to soothe his stress. The feeling was strange because I was not physically there, yet I could sense his emotions. I then stepped back into my own perspective. I realized that in this vision I was a wealthy man, well known in the city, with a wife. I imagined paying cash for the bread and cheese. I felt a pang of guilt because the shopkeeper was struggling while I seemed to have plenty. After leaving the shop, I imagined myself preparing for a party. I saw my wife getting ready. She had light brown skin, perhaps Spanish or Arabic ancestry. Her hair was long and dark, usually tied up for parties. She wore dark makeup on her eyelids and very long eyelashes. She wore a black dress that looked elegant. I made a joke about her makeup, teasing her in a playful way. The party was in a large, expensive building. Other guests were dressed similarly to me. Violin music played in the background. I felt as if I were the music itself, moving through the room, bouncing off the walls. My wife and I were laughing, dancing, enjoying the evening. At some point we had a small argument. The argument felt like the frustration I had felt earlier in the shopkeeper. I left the building for a breath of fresh air. As I stepped outside, I was hit by something hard. I fell to the ground. My head felt light, as if it were floating. My wife rushed to my side. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. I sensed that she thought I might die, but I did not feel fear. The feeling of death was present, but it did not scare me. I felt a calm acceptance. When I returned to the interior, my hands began to move on their own. They moved from my head to my heart repeatedly, as if I were trying to synchronize breath and pulse. My mind kept repeating the words, mind and heart. I started to drum a rhythm on my chest. The drumming was involuntary, but it felt natural. In this part of the vision, I became a dark-skinned man, perhaps African or Arabic. I felt a strong sense of belonging to this identity, stronger than any other identity I had taken on earlier. While drumming, another figure appeared. He was a close friend of mine, also dark-skinned, named Hikim. We smiled at each other, giggled, and played the drum together. The rhythm we created was lively and full of joy. The drumming made me feel as if I were sending a message back in time to a previous version of myself, a version that lived in a desert landscape. I imagined that my future spirit had entered the body of the desert drummer. He seemed grateful for the visit. He laughed and thanked me for the energy I brought. The beat we played continued for a while. Then a voice asked for my name. I tried to recall my name in this desert identity, but the salvia seemed reluctant to reveal it. It felt as if the plant sensed my desire and waited. Eventually it allowed me to hear my name. The name was Vudar Sal-La. I repeated the name aloud. In the culture of the desert people, names held great importance. I introduced myself to a group of tribesmen. I described a woman I intended to marry. I said she had dark skin, which was obvious because everyone around us had dark skin. I spoke in a language that felt familiar, even though I had never learned it before. The words flowed easily, as if I were speaking my native tongue. I thought it was odd, but I did not question it. I went to the woman's father to ask for permission to marry his daughter. I was calm. I knew the father well and felt affection for him. He welcomed my request with a smile. We joked about how I pretended to be nervous, even though I was not. The conversation felt real, even though it was part of the vision. After the discussion, I heard a name that seemed to belong to the place we were in. It sounded like Sulur or Sundahar. I could not be sure of the exact pronunciation, but the sound stayed with me. After this scene, I felt myself moving again. I floated outside my body, looking at the world from a distance. My head turned side to side as if I were attracted to something beyond the window. I saw a star shining in the night sky. I felt as if I were the star, and the star was me. I stared at the star, feeling a deep connection. A voice in my head said that it was time to return, that someone was waiting for me. I agreed. I opened my eyes and sat up in my bedroom. I felt thirsty. I thought about drinking water. As soon as the thought formed, my body moved to the sink, turned on the faucet, and splashed water on my face. The water felt cold and refreshing. The moment the water hit my skin, the vivid images faded. I knew the trip had ended. The experience was bizarre and vivid. I had never taken any drug before, and the intensity surprised me. For the next 3 days I felt uplifted, as if I had been reborn. I felt more connected to the world, more aware of how everything is linked. I thought about the feeling of being wind, grass, a leaf, a child, a wealthy man, a frustrated shopkeeper, a desert drummer, and a star. Each role showed me a different way of being. I realized that consciousness can move between many forms, and that the plant gave me a brief glimpse of that possibility. I learned that fear can be a signal, not an enemy. When I first panicked, remembering the substance helped me calm down. I learned that surrender can be more useful than trying to control every detail. I learned that every feeling, even a simple heat or chill, can be a doorway to a larger picture. I learned that the world is full of small stories that overlap, and that a single breath can carry many of them at once.